Hi there, this is Leisha Holmes and I'm your host on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast. And I am so honoured and thrilled to be joined by a fellow podcaster actually. And this individual is somebody that I have been watching from across the pond. This is Adam Posner and he is the host of the podcast. He's also founder of NHP Talent Group, a mentor and basically a top global voice. And I am so excited to listen to what he's going to share with our audience today, who are right across the world. Welcome to you today, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing great, Alicia. Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to join you and really excited to meet your audience. Pleasure.
Definitely. We can't wait for our audience to get to know you. So for those who are not yet following you, which I can't believe that there's anyone not following you, but if they're not, who are you and what do you do?
Absolutely. So first of all, pleasure. Again, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Adam Posner. I am a recruiter by trade, a connector. That's what I do. That's my superpower, whether it be for personal, whether it be for business. When I see two people, two opportunities, two things that need to be connected, that's what I do best. I recruit in the marketing, media, advertising, ad tech, and MarTech world here in the States. And I'm also the host of the podcast, Top Global Career Podcast, where I unpack my guests' career journeys and bring out all the learnings from within.
Absolutely lovely. And whereabouts are you based in the States?
I am in New York, New York City, New York.
And we were just talking off camera that Adam is having his first foray to the UK in July 2022, which is very exciting. We'll be delighted to welcome you to Recfest, apparently. That's very exciting. If anyone's going to this, and as you're listening to this, then please do. Please
find me. Find me. Let's have a beer. I go way back with my connection with the UK. I back in my days when I was a camper at a sleepaway camp in upstate New York, they used to bring over a ton of foreign staff, and I used to just be enamored with the British accent and learning all about their culture. I mean, I was a little 9-10-year-old boy, and I was just fascinated that somebody spoke the same language as me, but they spoke a little bit differently. And I just grew a great affection to the British culture. And I'm really excited. I can't believe it's taken me 43 years to get there. But yeah, July 7th, I'll be hosting a stage over at Recfest.
You're going to have your first ever proper British cup of tea.
Yes, I like tea. I have tea usually once a day.
I know, but
I'm a green tea fan. Is that okay? Or is that counterculture?
No, I don't like green tea personally. I'm a coffee.
I'm fine with black tea. I like chamomile at night. I mean,
it smells nice at night time. It's going to be a real pleasure to get to know you much better. Now, one of the main reasons I wanted to invite you on is to, I guess, pick your brains, because for me, when I do my podcast, everybody knows that I record once a month, one day where I just blitz all my guests, and I feel like you take.
That's insanity.
It is insanity, but
that's insanity. Whatever works for you, though.
It is. It definitely works for me. But I feel like you said superpower. For me, the amazing benefit that I get of listening to all these great thought leaders is that I feel like I'm learning so much. I'm a sponge on this day, and I can then use that all month to then hopefully inspire and educate my audience more. And you're in the same position. So tell us about the podcast, what sort of people you do invite on, and then what I guess if you can plagiarize what they taught you, what are some of the best learns that you've had so far that spring to mind?
Yeah, it's interesting. So a little back history. So I'm actually approaching my 3-year anniversary on February 19th. Not sure when this show is going to come out, but I started the show with an itch that I needed to scratch. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts, and there was nothing really great in the recruiting, hiring space, HR space. I mean, there was a couple of shows out there, but they were kind of dry. And I knew that I had this passion inside that needed to come out. So I just went for it, and I recorded my first interview on Zoom. I was in a conference room in an office space I was renting, and it was okay. It wasn't anything crazy. But I said to my friend afterwards, after listening back to it, I said to him, this is actually pretty good. Wouldn't it be great if I was able to go into my vast Rolodex, my vast network, and which I have from my years of working in marketing, media, and advertising, and just bring out thought leaders and reach out to amazing people that I know? And what if I brought people on board who I used to work with that maybe actually fired me or was not a great boss or something? And that's what I started to do, and share those stories. And looking back on it 3 years, I've recorded, 210 episodes. It's been an amazing journey. But the whole purpose of the podcast is it's my canvas, just like you. It's my canvas to shine a light on others. And as a result of that light reflects back on me. And what I do is I unpack my guest career journeys, and I bring out all the wisdom within. So the show started out really focusing on talent, HR, hiring. And then I started to interject some more interesting life stories, life journeys, entrepreneurial journeys. And that's when the show really took off because I diversified the guest list. I still always focus. For example, if I was talking to an entrepreneur who built a business, I would always bring it back at some point in the show to talk to them about hiring, culture, how do they interview, how do they build teams. So it would always tie back into that. And I found my art. I really did. I found, listen, I can't draw, I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't act, but I'm a damn good host. And I found that by doing the podcast, and it brought out an entirely new passion. And the other piece, I know I'm rambling a moment here. The other piece is it turned into a business development tool where I was able to use the show to reach out to decision makers at companies that I want to work with and invite them onto the show. And it was insanely easier to gain new business versus cold calling and emailing. And it established me as a thought leader in the industry and giving me opportunities to connect and be a guest on amazing shows like yours.
Well, that's very kind. I like the smooth way you just did that at the end. I like the way that you talk about connection.
Yeah, that comes with experience.
It does. No, I'm smooth. Apparently, I'm quite good host for the same reason. Bit schmaltzy, but that's just me. Bit cheap. I think it's really important. You've made some really important points there, and I think it is an honor and privilege to sort of pick people's brains and to understand what has made them successful in their careers. And I think what's happened over certainly the last 2 years or so is that the human story of how somebody's become successful has become much more palatable and much more accessible. And actually, that's what we want to know. How did you become successful? What challenges did you face? And I think that that's a brilliant way to elevate the guests you have on and why they want to come on your show, because they're given the forum to do
100%.
Without a shadow of a doubt. People don't just want to know facts.
Yeah, and it's also right. It's exactly too. And I think for any podcaster out there, it's about finding a unique angle to your show. How is your show going to be different? And I always say too, when there's guests that ask me for questions in advance, and I say, I don't do that. I'm not going to give you the questions in advance because I want it to be an organic conversation. Yeah. And I want to throw curveballs. I want to ask interesting questions. And I also want to give the show the ability to go in a direction based on the conversation. And I've done that many, many times where I do a ton of research, and any good host will do a ton of research. And I have a list of questions, bullet points, areas that I want to go. But if I start having a conversation with a guest and it starts to go down a rabbit hole of something completely entertaining, educational, and fascinating, we're going in that direction. And I love it. And that's when the show really takes off.
But that's because you're using your interviewing experience. And let's face it, you've probably been sat with a CEO or a candidate even, where you thought you could have asked one thing. And then actually, like 100%. You say, that's the sign of a good listener. You've gone, hang on a second, let's go down there. Let's go down that route. And I think that's where, I have not ever sat down and gone, right, what's the strategy for the Recruiters Recruitment podcast? For me, it's just, we give an overview of what we're going to talk about, but somebody like yourself,
exactly,
rather kind of go with the flow. We will still learn something. So let me bring it back to that.
Of course.
So if you think about, you don't have to name names, we can tag them on our show. When you've come off a show that you've recorded, when you've sat there and thought that was a game-changing thing to learn, are there any? There might just be one example, but are there any things specific you've learned from your guests?
I mean, I think there's been just a great cross section of learning. I mean, I said this before. I mean, this podcast is my masterclass. I've literally built my own masterclass where I have guests on that I just want to learn from. For example, I had Bracken Darrell on a couple months back. He's the CEO of Logitech, and he talked about some of his early lessons. And I'm sorry, it's still early in the morning here in New York. My coffee hasn't kicked in, but there's so many lessons from senior executives. I mean, he's a C-level Fortune 500, CEO, and like how to get there, what were the stumbling blocks, and we really dug into that too. But the real interesting life lessons for me are when I'm talking to an entrepreneur, or I'm talking, for example, I've had a couple of military veterans on and hearing about their journeys. I had Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. He's one of the handful of quadruple amputees to survive battle injuries, and it wasn't so much specific learnings, but it was being able to be in his presence and feel his positivity. Yeah. Or my buddy Amika, who suffered a football injury and has been paralyzed for about 8 and 9 years, and learning his journey and his struggles, because you see the positivity on the outside, but they don't really talk too much about the darkness when they're off camera, when they're home by themselves, when they're questioning life. That's the good stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And I think that's probably why you have transformed what was possibly something that could have gone whichever way 3 years ago, and you are now, without a shadow of a doubt, a global thought leader yourself as a podcast host, which is what's so tremendous about it. I think that's really interesting, because the space you're in, the fact that you are in marketing, you are in sales, and you're in digital, do you feel that there has been a real kind of collision for recruiters? If you think about, I mean, how long have you been in recruitment for, Adam?
About 7 years.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, you probably came into it as it was starting to become, you weren't just a recruiter just selling anymore. You had to think about your digital brand, your content. So it's so important to embrace, but you're in a position to learn from these amazing CEOs as well.
It's amazing. And I consider myself a markruter. I am a markruter. I am a hybrid. And the reason I think that I've had such success as a recruiter is because a couple things. I came into recruiting 7 years ago from working 15 years in the industry in advertising and marketing. So I didn't need to learn the industry. So when I got on with clients, when I got on with candidates, I was able to talk the talk. I was able to have a proper interview with a candidate and know what the heck I'm talking about, because I've been in those roles before. When I got on the call with clients, I'm able to talk shop with them and really understand the market. What I did have to learn was how to be a recruiter. I needed to learn the art and science of recruiting. And anybody who's out there, it's one of those things here in the States, and I'm sure it is in the UK and Europe too. Everyone thinks that they could be a real estate agent, right? Oh, I could sell a house. I've bought a house before. I've done construction. I'm qualified to be a real estate agent, but they have no clue about mortgages, legal, banking, all that stuff, inspections, all those things that go into selling a house. The same thing with recruiting. Oh, it's easy. That company has an open job. I'm going to go on LinkedIn. I'm going to find somebody. I'm going to get them to sit in that seat, and I'm going to get my 25% commission. That's not how it works. We both know that.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of steps in between that. So I think it's also an educational piece that I use my show to show people all those steps that are involved. I'm actually trying to make a conscious effort to book a couple of guests this year that are pure recruiters and leaders in the recruitment space, and get back to a couple of shows that are really technically recruiting and really get into the nuts and bolts of it, because I think I've lost that a little bit. And it's not at fault, because that's just where the show has gone into a more edutainment line. But I think I owe it to myself, and I owe it to my audience to do a couple of shows on recruiting
as well. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Because basically what you've said there is that you're the educator for your market. And I think it's interesting, because I don't know whether this is a thing over there, but certainly in the UK, I've talked about it today with my other guests. A lot of people fall into recruitment. Oh yeah, from industry, it's a
catch-all.
It's just the way it is.
We're the misfits, Leisha. We're the misfits.
I gift of the gab. I was born with a phone attached to my ear. That's what everyone used to say. So you've literally got them attached to your ear. No, I think it's it's insightful, isn't it? Because ultimately, what you are able to do, these are people that are inspiring in what they've achieved. They know this market inside out, but not all the best decision makers know how to recruit. They don't know how to attract talent. We're talent short across every single sphere. So what I do, you in your position as a recruiter, but also as a recruitment host as well. So where do you think the market's going to go? I mean, obviously there's a lot around audio. There's a lot around, people having their own podcasts, people having events again, now that we can get out. Where do you think, if you were a recruiter now starting out, trying to build your brand, what would you do?
I would listen. I would go on a listening tour. I would try to listen as much as possible. But I think what it really comes down to is what you mentioned before is building your brand and your presence. Now, there's a ton of recruiters out there that are top billers that you'll never see them post on LinkedIn. But the reason is because they've built up a niche specialty where they're known in their market. Yeah. They know they're fishing in the same pond. They're highly specialized, and they don't need to. Me, I'm a more generally broad marketing recruiter. I recruit across a number of disciplines within it. So it's important. So how do you establish yourself as a thought leader? I think it's important, first and foremost, you can never call yourself a thought leader, but you could establish thought leadership. Yeah. And I do that by inviting guests on who are actual experts, and I listen and I ask them the right questions, and I regurgitate it back to them to make sure there's clarity there, to make sure that we're understanding it. I think another big piece that I do on my show is I talk about the career journey and the lessons within to help the job seekers. So I'm really trying to give a broad swatch of information there. And I think for any recruiter out there, the question is, how do you build that personal brand? Start off small. You could interview somebody on a quick little video chat. It doesn't have to be this fancy set and this whole setup. Record little tidbits. Do a blog post, post a LinkedIn article, put out an email blast. I mean, there's a million things that you could do there to show thought leadership. And it starts with a simple post. Give your point of view on, the easiest trick that I tell anybody out there for thought leadership, go on LinkedIn, look on the right side, the right rail, there's a news column.
Yeah.
I could guarantee you that at least half of those are related to something that you could speak of. And you may not have to be an expert, but you could have a point of view on it and explain your positioning. Yeah. That'll start an engagement thread. That'll start comments on there and just have a smart, educated conversation. And that's how you build your brand up.
Yeah, definitely. I think commenting on a post like that is actually your hidden toolkit to your brand elevate amongst your target audience. If you're not sure what content to share, just go and listen to what Adam said, because actually it's so simple. And some of the best engagement I've had is not a post I've shared, it's a post I've commented on, or it's been shared by somebody else. So I think that's really insightful. Do you have any pet hates? Are there any things where you just totally switched off, where you unfollow somebody, or dare I say it, disconnect from somebody on LinkedIn? What have been your pet hates?
Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest thing on LinkedIn are when non-experts in our space, people who don't work in the recruitment space, are giving advice. And let me caveat this. Okay. You don't have to work in this space to give advice in your point of view as a job seeker. That's fine. But if you're not an expert in this space and you're talking about an ATS system, or you're talking about the ins and outs of the recruitment process with the intention of drawing somebody in for a business reason, it could be a course, it could be something monetarily gained for you, that's when I have a problem. Yeah. It's about the intention. It's about your how. That's when I disconnect from people on LinkedIn. Obviously, if anybody is, insulting, derogatory, racist, sexist, misogynist, any of those things, you're out of my. I don't need that in my feed. I don't need that cluttering it up there. Those are the basics. Yeah, no, right? I think that's really important. And actually, I don't know if you follow a guy called Stephen Bartlett. He's the new Dragon on Dragons in the UK, and he's the CEO, founder of Social Chain. He's prolific over here. He's an amazing guy. Oh yeah, Stephen Bartlett. Okay, yes.
Yeah. So and he shares a lot of thought leadership around mindset, well-being, and one of the key things that's coming out from his vibe at the moment is that we need to now all put a line in the sand and stop following people that make us feel negative, make us feel uncomfortable, share misogynistic, racist, inappropriate things. You don't need to bite back at these people, just remove them, because
just get rid of them.
You are what you consume, and that includes your social media.
Yeah, you just cut them out. Cut out the negativity. I also believe in. I don't feel toxic positivity. The people that make up stories, the people that virtual signaling. It's not an immediate disconnect, but if it happens in a pattern and it happens a lot, listen, there's a fine line. It's really hard to between being proud and humble bragging. Yeah. There's a fine line, because we are proud of our accomplishments. And don't get me wrong, let's be honest. If you're posting on social media, you have an intention for attention.
Of course you are.
I'm not just posting so I could read it. I want other people to read it. So let's not lie about that. Let's not sugarcoat it.
I totally agree with you, but I agree with you about the virtue signaling. And I think there comes a point where you just have to decide whether this is what you want to, what the sort of people
you own your feed, remove it.
You want to have on your feed, and definitely remove it. Did you use Clubhouse? What are your thoughts on audio?
I did for a hot minute. I jumped on it and I thought it was pretty cool for about the first week. And then what happened was there was an oversaturation of the same people that just continued to talk about themselves to themselves. And I was like, this is just an echo chamber. I'm like, this is just ridiculous. So self-serving. And listen, I can't fault anybody for trying to drive business. Yeah, everyone's got to make a living. Everyone's trying to sell something, but it goes back to your how. I don't need to sit there and hear your sales pitch. No. And I don't have that many hours in a day. I have a business to run like you do. I'm just not interested.
No, definitely. You've got children to look after and everything else. What about LinkedIn audio then? Have you trialed that yet? Do you think that'll take?
No, I have access to it. I've not done it yet. I had a pretty crazy January. It's on the docket, but for me, it's actually the same thing as Clubhouse. Yeah. And for me, I'm going to be pretty technical on this. I see the value in it, but if I can't record it and repurpose the content, I'm not really interested.
That was my problem with Clubhouse, because at one point I did actually have a weekly room with quite a lot of people on there, because we were having weekly guests on. It was very hard to manage it into my week, but I did.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it was, but I agree with you. I much prefer if I'm going to give my time and use my time to create content, I want to be able to share it whenever I want to share it and listen to it whenever I want to listen to it. That's my with it too. So,
and you were able, if you had the right equipment, you could record a clubhouse, but it was very technical and it was a pain in the ass. And I didn't.
And failed abysmally on behalf of a massive group that we did it for International Women's Day. There were about 6 girls, and it was this gorgeous hour where we'd between us all shared a snippet of something, and I was meant to record it and I got it wrong, and so we didn't ever have it to share with anyone.
I mean, that was the whole thing. I mean, I understand the ephemeral marketing if you look at like TikTok and Snapchat and these things that kind of go away, but aside from that, I don't need to.
No, definitely not. Well, look, it's been really insightful, and I know how busy you are, and to join us at the start of your working day when you've probably got a million things to do and probably not had enough coffee yet, but you'll enjoy the British tea when you come over here in July.
I can't wait.
And I'm sure that you'll get a very warm welcome, and it's been really lovely to get to know you today, Adam. Thank you for joining me on the Recruiters Recruitment Podcast.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me, and a pleasure for your audience out there. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and check out thepodcast.com.
Oh, we will do. We'll make sure all the details are on there. Thank you so much, Adam.